Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Dojo Live this Thursday, September 22nd, 2022. My name is Kim Lantis, and it's my pleasure to be hosting today along with my co-host, America Guerrero.
Hello, everybody.
Hi, America. Good to be here with you again as well. And of course, the star of today's show is Joe Miller, General Manager at Pocketalk. Joe, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me. I've really been looking forward to this. You guys do such a great job. I'm a big fan, and now I feel like I'm part of the team.
Yeah, totally part of the team, and you're welcome back anytime that you want. But before we get into Pocketalk, which is all about communication globally, cross cultures, cross languages, we're very excited. We do want to get to know you a bit better. If you could please tell us, some of your background, your passions, and kind of what's led up to where you are today. Thank you.
Yeah, so for me, I grew up in El Paso, Texas, and really fascinating place to grow up because it's a combination of really its own kind of mashup culture between, the US and English and Mexico and Tex-Mex and, the El Paso Juarez border is essentially one town. We were very, very freely across the border. I was always fascinated with language growing up in an area that was so multicultural. And growing up, one of my really good friends was moved from Buenos Aires to El Paso and spoke perfect Spanish.
Mm-hmm.
And they spoke it at home. And he had a very difficult time on the playground because his Spanish was too good. It was too accurate. It wasn't, street smart enough.
Oh,
And so he wouldn't speak Spanish. But yet when he went home, that was all they spoke. But it wasn't the same kind of Spanish, and it led to, fifth grade bullying, that kind of things. So it was really a fascinating learning experience for me. And then I'm taking Spanish in school, and the Spanish I'm taking, I can't use either. Because it's too
using vosotros, which isn't used in Mexico at all.
Exactly right, and it was just too generic, and then so we kind of developed our own little Tex-Mex, border culture. But it was really interesting at how English and Spanish mashed together really made this interesting environment. And so I had a really early interest in language. But after school, graduated, and I was fortunate enough to get into the connectivity and communications business. So I was a very early employee at DirecTV before the satellite even launched in the sky. It was really just a fascinating place to be. And then from DirecTV, I was one of the first employees at TiVo. And I was at TiVo for 14 years. And TiVo was really interesting because it was this collection of managing existing content and media and people's relationship with it, but yet time shifting and recording and consuming where you wanted. And then during the time that we were there, the introduction of streaming media and streaming TV, and then TiVo managing and moderating both sides of that house. Really just a great place to be. And then most recently, I was really fortunate to work for a great company called Eero, which is a Wi-Fi connectivity company, which does whole home mesh networking about getting devices to speak and speak freely around the home. And then I had a chance to see Pocketalk. And Pocketalk is a handheld device. I'll just give you a little brief sample.
Like a cell phone size?
Cell phone size. It allows you to speak fluently in 82 languages with a built-in 82. Wow. Anything from Swahili to Farsi to French to German to Spanish, it's all in here. And it's got a built-in SIM card, and that SIM card will allow you to go anywhere in the world and just take it out of your suitcase, turn it on, and go.
Wow.
And it's really, really great. And it's kind of like this mashup between, my growing up in a multilingual environment getting involved in technology and connectivity, and then now connectivity, technology, and language all in one thing.
Yeah.
So it's really it worked out. It worked out great.
What an amazing story. I don't think a lot of us most of us probably don't get the opportunity to find something that is such an awesome mix and mashup of our own talents, personality, and passion. That's great. Before we move on to the topic of conversation today, I did want to ask about that SIM card. So this means that I'm able to use Pocket Talk even if I don't necessarily have a wireless connection?
It does. So you can use it on Wi-Fi, or again, this kind of built-in data card, which is in the side where my finger is.
Teeny tiny, like
Teeny
you would
tiny
expect?
little chip that's in here, but every one of them
Fantastic.
comes with a 2-year data card. And what's great about that is whenever you go to, say, even the US to Canada, I have to register with Rogers Cable on my cell phone and accept the terms and conditions. But with this global SIM, I don't worry about that. It doesn't use my phone data. And I just could pop off in Mexico City, Toronto, Berlin,
Yeah.
wherever I wanted to go around the world, turn it on and be free to go.
And you even mentioned languages like Swahili or Farsi, which, a lot of times if we're traveling in countries like that, it's remote areas that might not even have reliable or access even to something like wireless, and yet you can still be connected and communicate. Fantastic.
Yeah. So is that one of the reasons that you don't have the software in your cell phone? That's why you need to have a device?
Well, there's two reasons. One is a dedicated device is just going to be quicker. It only has one task to perform. You've noticed on your cell phone when you open up apps, sometimes it takes a while for the app to spin up. And so this is just always on touch of a button. But also for data privacy, your information is contained in this device, not your cell phone. And this device is used in B2B settings all over the world. And in B2B settings, you really don't want your personal cell phone. And you don't want employees, having, say, text messages and other information popping up on their screen in a dedicated device, just like you have a dedicated computer at work. That really means that this the company's data, the company's conversations, or in the case of a consumer, your cell phone data and things don't get mixed up.
Beautiful. You don't accidentally break an NDA.
Right, which could easily happen.
Perfect. All
There we
right.
go.
So with that, I think we've already really touched on some fascinating levels about Pocket Talk and you, Joe. But let's move on to the specific topic of today's conversation, which is
How can language technology help us in that rapidly changing world? So please share with us, why did you choose this topic? Why is it relevant for today's show?
Well, I actually think it's really everything these days. And when I think about language and culture and people and look at the migration that's happened over the last 5 years, one of the things that we've learned is that we invented the product primarily as a travel companion. The product was born out of Japanese innovation, and in Japan, it's a wonderful culture. I love going to Japan, but they're all Japanese and they only speak Japanese. And so, hosting the Olympics, how would you do that? There's going to be people from all around the world, international business travel, people coming to Japan, and so they're coming from all different places. And then this device was born out of that necessity to communicate. And so that's really was the start, and it was primarily intended for travel. It was intended for some business conversations. But as we went through the COVID time, what we realized is this is a must in healthcare. This became a must in education. You can't expose real-time translators to, potentially infectious diseases. Kids studying at home, say they spoke, Farsi or Chinese or Japanese, and the teachers are now having to do this without the translators that they had on hand, and the kids have to do it at home. So it went from being a product of really being helpful to a must-have. Then you take the logistics crisis, and people are hiring, in Germany, they hired 3,000 Turkish TSA agents. because they needed to keep the airports flowing. England hired thousands of truck drivers from Eastern Europe to make sure that the trucks were moving, the wheels were spinning, the gas was getting delivered, those kind of things. And it was imperative in those settings that people could communicate. And it could be a safety issue. It could be, there's moving pieces, there's moving, safety regulations. You have to shut the line down. You have to, communicate with people. And, it's okay, in areas like, El Paso, you can do English and Spanish and everybody can kind of get along. But even in El Paso, they took in 5,000 Afghan refugees. And this was pressed into duty to help them assimilate into that culture, where food is one thing, weather is one thing, but if you can't speak the language, you can't contribute. And people just really want to contribute. And so we found that the product really became ultra useful in all of these settings. And it was really born out of the need for people to communicate using technology real time, right away. Don't wait for a translation hotline. Don't wait for somebody who needs to find a translator for your particular topic. You needed to address people, in the hospital. Who are you? How are you feeling? Where are you from? Have you been exposed to other people? Yes, no. Go to line A, go to line B, and quickly get people to where they needed to go. There was no time to wait for translators, and that really
Mhm.
was a big eye opener for us. And it really changed the business, and it really changed the game for us as migrating out of primarily a consumer product into now 60% of our business is enterprise.
Wow, that's fantastic. And I think it makes the scope and scale and impact so much larger than one might previously have in mind, similar to where the origin was about travel and tourism, and then just realizing that it's such a larger scope. I really loved your sentiment about people wanting to contribute. I feel that sometimes when we're speaking with someone whose native language is one different to our own, and funnily enough, even when they're the one who is speaking English as their second language, and we might be monolingual, right? We have this tendency to somehow judge maybe even their intellect, or make these assumptions that are completely untrue. And to be able to have somebody communicate immediately and clearly, I think is also a way to eliminate a lot of bias.
You're now touching on the finer points of this, and what makes this job so rewarding and so satisfying is, when the product was in the hands of a nursing staff, and we found that there was a nurse. She actually did a wonderful piece on social media about this, but she is a hospice nurse, and she was tending to patients, and some of the patients didn't speak English. And so she was checking the box of what they needed for requirements, but she wasn't checking the human box. So she brought her Pocket Talk to work, and she met a Korean lady who she had been working with for a month. And she found out that they talked for an hour. And she found out
Oh,
that behind that face and behind the chart, the things I have to check off on a day to day basis, there's a real person. And that real person has a life and a family and a story. And she said they sat there. She's the most interesting lady I've ever met. She goes, I walked out of there absolutely moved. And the lady appreciated getting to meet me. And we had a great relationship, for the remainder of her care. But what was so fascinating about it is the mental health of the nurse was improved because she was now doing what nurses love to do, and that's care for people, not checklist. And then we also found that the patient itself, the patient had a better quality of life, and the patient was feeling heard. And a lot of times, as a patient, you don't want to bother somebody or bother a translator. And it's just, I would like, can my daughter see me today? Can I have a glass of water? These pillows hurt my back. It's just little things like that. It's kind of the bedside manner piece. And what we're finding is that when people can actually communicate with their full vocabulary, they now identify with each other as people and not
Uh-huh.
projects. And
Yeah.
it's really been really rewarding.
Absolutely beautiful. Now, when it comes to, I think we've really hit on the idea of language tech and the rapidly changing world, why it's relevant, why it's important. So let's dive into the tech itself a little bit. I don't know if you have a demo or something that you'd like to show us. And my question also, is this purely audio? Is this text translation? How does it work?
Yeah, great question. So this is the device, and as you can see, we have it set up for English and Spanish. The device is, obviously clearly it's a handheld sized device.
Mm-hmm.
It has noise canceling speakers on both sides. So when the device is laid out between two people, we can begin to communicate. And then when I press the button to do a translation, the translation goes talk, speech to text to our servers, translated back, and then put back into audio. So
Wow.
let's give it a shot. We're on headphones, so we'll see how it goes. But I'll give you an example. Thank you for having me today. It's wonderful to be on the show. I look forward to many more good discussions.
Gracias por recibirme hoy. Es maravilloso estar en el programa. Espero muchas más buenas discusiones.
Es un
And you can
placer,
see
Joe.
you can see it's also in text, which is terrific because if the person might be, say, have a hearing disability, they're not excluded. And again, we can flip from Spanish to German to Farsi, Swahili, any language that we want to, just with a touch of a button. And when I go to Japan, which is where our corporate office is, it's invaluable. And then I'm able to get to meet employees that don't speak English and really get to know them on a regular basis. And so the product, we have almost 1 million sold worldwide. We've done close to 500 million translations. The product is used in, we have offices in Europe. We have offices in the US. I'm here in Palo Alto, California, and obviously offices in Tokyo, Japan. So truly a global product, and it's really being used on the front lines of where people and culture are coming together and solving problems.
For sure. And sorry, America, real quick. I just have to say, as America is a native Spanish speaker, I do speak Spanish, not as my native language, but that translation was pretty spot on, right? Maybe not quite in the sense of the casual, more like conversational piece, but absolutely understandable, and it was great.
Yeah, and that leads me to my question. What about idioms? For example, there are occasions between Kim and I that she is saying something that I don't understand. The other day, you told me something about frogs, an idiom related to frogs. And I did
I
my
don't know.
quick research
I
in Google
did.
Translate. But just if you know the context,
For
you
example,
will know
get
what
the
she
ball
is.
rolling.
Exactly. If you translate that, it will be like, okay, it's not about a ball, of course, but it's about something else. Is this something that you can utilize with this device to understand idioms?
Well, we're getting better all the time, that's for sure. And we're updating the language translation engines all the time. And we're always looking for popular phrases, and when they happen, to make sure that the translations are right, because you can really make some mistakes. However, from an owner's perspective, a user's perspective, the better language in, the better language out. So oftentimes it's wise to choose your words carefully. There's some things that simply just don't translate. Names is one thing that can be really difficult. It's Our CEO's name is Noriyuki, which means directly translated into Japanese, it means from the sea. And so if you say, I'd like to introduce Noriyuki, and you're using Pocketalk, you'd say, I would like to introduce from the sea. So,
Right. Yeah.
so you have to, learn a little bit about that, but we're getting better all the time. And it's really, it's a fascinating journey to be on. And from what I can tell, nobody is directly conquering this center of language and culture using technology. Sure, there's translators, there's language learning schools, but to really have a technology that, in a very cost-effective way, can be at the intersection of language and friction where people are trying to solve the problems, there really isn't too much else.
And I think, to your point, there's still a lot of onus and being aware and self-aware that we need to take, right? Like you said, just creating this awareness, like, okay, Kim, I do have this, I don't know if it's a bad habit, but I do have the habit of using idioms often. And so for me, to be a better person, a clearer communicator, it's no harm in saying we need to get started versus let's get the ball rolling, right? And so I think it could just also make us more self-aware and better people as a result. I do have a question in terms that you mentioned Japanese quite a few times now, and this is a completely different alphabet, right, than English or a lot of other, I don't even know if alphabet is the right word, to be honest, than English. And so in the example of the Spanish to English or English to Spanish, most of the letters, the symbols are the same. In terms of me trying to read or even type, Japanese, for example, I wouldn't even know where to begin. Are you thinking of maybe integrating some type of visual translation? Like if I were walking down the street and I need to know, what a storefront sign says or something of that sort, am I going to have to painstakingly try to figure out these symbols and type that in? Or am I able to kind of take a photo and have it read for me?
Well, that's exactly it. You're able to take a photo, and if you see on the back of the device, it has a camera.
Just for your knowledge, folks, we did not pre-prepare this question. This was already a feature. We did not ask me to ask this question. That's fantastic.
Yeah, it's really, it's a logical connection, right? And so the camera, so say I'm walking around Japan and all of the language is Japanese, and in particular when you're away from the more international hotels and you're in the deeper parts of the city.
The best parts to be.
The best parts to be, but without a doubt, the most authentic parts. You're able to use the camera, and you can translate menus, you can translate street signs, you can translate just about any written word, and it's really fast, really easy, and super simple to do. And so it's a device that allows you to have the tools to really navigate. And another feature is we found out from people who were using the device in restaurants that currency exchange rates change so often that it would be nice to just on this device translate the menu, see the price, and then what is the yen to dollar ratio? Oh, okay, this is a $9 dish. Got it. Okay, this is a $75 dish. Oh, this is I think I'll have something else. But yeah, it's great to do that. And then when we do translations from English to Japanese, it shows up in Japanese characters across the top. So it shows up in Japanese kanji, which is the characters. And so that way, if the person, again, they can have the audio output, but you can also show them the device. They can say, oh, go here, go, here's what you need to understand, or things of that nature. And we found that by being able to do that as quickly as we can, some factories in the U.S. have over 20 languages spoken in the factory at one time. And so and you've got, machinery and wheels and forklifts and a lot of things going on, but being able to hire and recruit workers who are non-English speaking is a must for society. However, communicating with them is also a must. And you're now able to go from do this, don't do this, this is the policy, this is the procedure, but you can also now ask them, hey, good morning, how was your weekend? Hey, how's your son doing? I heard there was a soccer game this weekend. And you can now build a relationship and have much more community. And then the more you get to know people in their native language, the more even the exchanges are, as opposed to somebody who's disadvantaged by maybe only 25% of their available vocabulary, and they're not able to truly express themselves. And so I think this has been a big win for many, many companies across the country.
For sure. Humanizing the exchange, personalizing it, inclusivity. And I think also even just this ability to tap into potential that you might not have seen or recognized prior, right? And just to ideas and, suggestions and everything that might not have been born had we not had the ability to communicate with one another clearly.
Yeah, and being able to do that in a way where there's not a third person around, third party,
yeah,
right? And so it can just be us having a conversation, and I don't feel like I have to speak to this person, and that makes it somehow it has to be important enough or serious enough, or I don't want to burden this person, or I'll just kind of do my thing. Now I can really contribute and really be a part of the conversation and have a voice, which is so important.
Yeah, and I think even these misconceptions that we might have about individuals, whether it's cultural differences or language differences that prevent, maybe shut us down or have us perceived in a different way. I mean, maybe if you're the person who's, learning this language, if you're living in an area where it's not your first language, you can be perceived as shy or whatever it might be, which might not be the case at all. You're just like, I'm stuck in this shell that can't communicate,
Right.
and the frustrations that implies. And I think alternatively, if you're, maybe a leader or a supervisor or someone, we have this bad habit of like thinking that if we speak slowly enough and loud enough, the person is going to somehow magically understand us. And so that there could be that perception that, he or she is angry all the time, they're unapproachable, whatever it might be, which might not be the case at all.
Right. Yeah, I think I think that happens just all too often. And then there's something about just getting on equal footing and sharing those ideas or observations I have from my job, or other people like me you might want to hire, and I know them. Is it okay if I introduce you to them? There's just so much more that you can get out of the person. And I think one of the things I've really realized is the language is great, and it's really helpful to do that, but what it does is it's unlocking a much deeper dialogue with somebody, and everybody has a story, and everybody has a journey. And the more you understand and can relate to people, you just get so much more out of it. And it really becomes, it's very humanizing. It's also very humbling sometimes when you get a chance to meet people and you realize, oh my gosh, I kind of might have thought one thing, and you're truly amazing. And your journey is remarkable. And I just want to hang out with you. This is awesome.
Yeah.
Love it.
And
Yeah.
is this something that you constantly utilize in your company? I mean, how is your company culture with this device? Are there different kind of people that speak different kind of languages? How is it to work there?
Well, in the company, it's interesting because we have offices in Amsterdam, which obviously is Dutch. We have main offices in Tokyo. And there are a lot of employees in Tokyo that don't speak English at all. And then we have offices here in Palo Alto. And so we're really a multinational company. And having the device when we're going to each other's offices really makes it much more collaborative. And the kind of people we hire, above all else, we want to have a passion for solving this problem. And of course, they need to have the expertise, but accountants need to do accounting. lawyers need to do lawyers, but deep down, if you have a passion for society, for humanity, and you have a passion for getting to people to really connect in a much deeper level, you will not only you'll put it this way, you'll never work another day in your life because you're solving the problems that you're passionate about, and that's really the way we feel about it.
I love it. Bring me to a final question. Just how, pre-COVID still, but definitely with COVID, the remote work, the distributed work, in your case, global workforce, are you able to use Pocketalk not just physically and in person? Am I able to connect this and use this via, a Zoom call or something of that sort?
So that's one of the things that we're working on releasing here in the US. It would be real-time transcriptions. We currently have it in Japan.
Nice.
So you would be able to speak Spanish and I would be able to speak English, and just like subtitles in a movie, you would see it across the bottom. And that's really, it's really important when we're having our conversations with the team in Japan, because we're no longer pausing for translation. So sometimes a meeting that, is a half an hour meeting is really a 15-minute meeting because so much time is being spent in translation. But now that we all have this tool, and we'll be launching it after the first of the year here in the US, it's already in use in Japan, but the meetings become free form. And I no longer have to hear you talk and then, oh, okay, and then go again. It's now just we're conversing. The dialogue's moving.
Definitely more efficient, more effective, and then going back just to the heart and humanity of it all, to actually feel like you're communicating with someone rather than waiting, and that disconnect that happens.
That's exactly it. And then a lot of times if you have to wait, I have an idea, but I don't want to bother everybody in the translator, so maybe I just won't do anything with it. Or I'll mention it later in another meeting when I know they speak more English. Now I can just say, hey, do we think about this? And people will be like, oh, no, that's a great idea.
Come out. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's ingested naturally into the conversation, as opposed to some why didn't they mention that yesterday? That would have been really helpful. Thank you. That's why we had the meeting. But, people don't always want to do that. And so, again, eliminating those language barriers is really, really super important to the quality of the work and the quality and the satisfaction that employees have when they're engaged on a topic with their full weight of their vocabulary.
Freedom. The freedom. That's all. It's freedom to me, liberation, and the freedom to be me, and to be you, and to connect at that level. Fantastic. Well, we are actually at the end of our half hour today, Joe. I feel like we could talk and learn more about Pocketalk for much, much longer than this. We do have to say adieu. So thank you so much for joining us and sharing your wisdom and the exciting technology that you're helping develop with us today.
Yeah, thank you for having me. And this is a real highlight. I've been a fan, so it's great to be here with you guys.
Awesome.
And that's feel free to learn more at pocketalk.com. We're having a great time doing this, and I hope that passion is felt by everybody today.
For sure. Hang on with us just one moment as we go off air. But before we do, Dojo Live fans, I want to remind you about our Monday recap show, where we will be talking about our opinions and thoughts behind Joe's show and the other shows that we had this week, as well as introducing the amazing shows coming up next week. It is a full week with 3 shows, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. As always, 10 a.m. Pacific, right here on Dojo Live. Thank you, everyone, and see you then.